In this lecture, we're going to look at more about marketing, but we're going to look at product related decisions and how those relate to the consumer, or how we can relate them to the consumer. So, here we're going to be looking at what we call branding, positioning, and packaging. As you can imagine, this stuff is out there. This has been pretty well thought out. But knowing what we're getting into, it's real easy to start seeing why we look at it from this approach. So, what is a brand? It's really just an intangible concept that helps people identify either a company or product. Because there's so many products and services out there, and they're all so similar. Really, the key is to try to identify yours by some unique way, by attaching some sort of emotional attachment or trust component to your product and services. This will help simplify your customer's choice. They think about this product or service, your brand comes to mind, and that kind of sticks with them as they follow through with their purchase. And this helps develop a relationship, usually a long-term relationship with the company or product and the consumer. So really what it comes down to is the brands will help build loyalty, which translates into what we call brand equity. If customers are loyal, they will come back to buy that product over and over. As a consumer, we've kind of been influenced such that we associate brands with certain benefits. They can be functional, like reliability, performance, or economical. Some examples would be Maytag. They're really push their reliability out there, with the Maytag repairman, the loneliest guy on the planet. Performance. I don't know if you know much about Bose products, but those are like pretty high-end speakers, music-related equipment. Honda, known for its economical vehicles and products. Psychological values here. Prestige, safety, or wholesome. If you think about Tiffany's, that's kind of a prestige. Volvo, Subaru's another one with safety in their vehicles. Wholesome family kind of thing. We got Disney. And after you establish this brand and that loyalty, typically people will pay a little bit more for the benefits they expect to get from your brand. So here's some really strong brands, and most of these I'm sure you have heard of, and if you haven't, I don't know what to tell you. So Tyson, Apple Computer, Borden Milk, of course the Nike swoosh, Bear. Bear's into a lot of different things, and most of these companies are. Walmart. So these are really strong brands. When you think of shoes, maybe you've got your own favorite shoes, but I would say probably if you asked 100 people, they're going to name Nike, or if you could show them a swoosh, they're going to know what that is. So these are just some examples of good branding. There are a lot of different methods to branding. One, we can use what we call corporate brands like Colgate, GE, Clorox, Maytag. This is kind of a method of branding products under a certain company or certain product line, and there will be several products under that. We have what we call product-specific brands, and these are tied directly to a specific product. Your Tide, your Maxwell House, your Kleenex. There are quite a few others. Then we have what we call umbrella brands. This is where one brand name is used in several product categories. Things like Kraft. you could probably name several products that are under the Kraft umbrella name. If this is a really, really small image, but right over here you see where Kraft is, and you see how it branches off into a bunch of different products. Same for Nestle, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, General Mills. You could probably name several products that are in each of these, but just by being familiar with that umbrella brand name, they can roll out new products, and it saves them money because they look at your products as being quality, and it saves the company money as far as designing new brands. We also have what we call co-brands, like Citibank, Visa. Citibank is its own entity. Visa, it's got its kind of own branch as far as a credit card, but they've teamed up and they kind of merged those together. We've got the Taco Bells and Doritos, or things like that, where they've kind of put things together and they kind of get a benefit from that synergy. The brand equity. This is where we have added value that's going to be endowed on the products or services. It could be reflected in the way consumers think, feel, and act with respect to the brand. So, one question is the worth of a brand in and of itself. An example, the social value of a well-known brand name. So, we can, if you've got a really well-known brand name, you're probably going to you should generate more revenue just from the brand recognition, because the consumers have a tie to that brand, that recognition of that brand name. They're going to perceive products as being well-known. They're going to be related to better quality. So an example would be something like, let's take Coca-Cola. If they wanted to introduce a new, say, diet drink, they could introduce it as, and they did, if you don't remember, this has been done when they rolled out Diet Coke. Now, it's been a while, but they attached the name Diet to the brand name Coke, and that automatically kind of put it up on a higher level as far as the branding. If they had decided to market or try to develop some program for Diet Coke alone without the brand name, it would have probably resulted in lower price to get the product to sell. It would, and they do have their own marketing campaign, but it would make it harder because they would have to put a lot more effort into their marketing of a, diet drink that wasn't attached to that Coke brand name. So just simply by attaching that Coke name to that product, it's like automatically moved it up in customers' minds to being a quality product, and therefore they could charge a little bit higher price, or, in the market, people value it a little bit more. Okay. The brand equity, this is something you can build up in different ways. You can increase awareness. This is usually done through advertising. And we see the advertising all over. The Super Bowl, I think this year commanded about $8 million per 30-second time slot because they have an enormous audience for that one event. It's really important to get their company name out in front of that many people. Usually they see that big kick right after that if people can advertise during some big sporting event or something like that. There's a perceived quality. This is usually built on your reputation. Over time, and you could probably name several companies that they're known for their good quality. And that's a reputational thing. Doesn't mean they don't put out a stinker every now and then, but generally it's a higher quality product. You have satisfied customers. Again, this ties back to your brand loyalty. That builds your equity. People will typically, they're driving down the grocery store aisle and, say Lay's potato chips. They're satisfied with those. They'll grab the bag off the shelf and keep on walking and maybe not even look at that bag that's right next to the Lay's. It's half the cost of the Lay's. They've built that loyalty. And then the co-branding, where you kind of get a benefit from two bigger brand names attached together, and you can build off that. We have brand extensions. This is where we're going to leverage brand equity to enter new products and markets. To do this, we have to evaluate the fit of a new offering. Sometimes you may have to reduce the cost of the introduction during your introduction. We may want to have a faster trial and adoption process in this. You can get quicker market positioning efforts. So we want to look at these as we evaluate the fit of a new offering and figure out where it's going to fit the best. And we want to do this quickly, okay? Now, as far as some potential negatives here, there are negatives with brand equity. You can have a dilution effect. And I think some drink manufacturers are probably getting close to this, where, say, Coca-Cola, the Coke company, has entered a number of different drink categories, and, they're robbing customers from their selves or different things. There can be negative feedback on some of this. There could be poor customer perception attached to some of this. So this is some negative effects of brand equity. We usually see this where we have a big product recall, or in the event, and this happens periodically, a big environmental disaster. Now, this goes back a few years now, but in 2010, British Petroleum had a huge oil spill. And that was considered a very negative feedback to them. And customers actually shifted away from BP because of that. There are a lot of advantages to having strong brands. Again, we've talked about several of these. We have a lot better perception of our product. And, you can't help but notice a lot of these slides have John Deere. John Deere has kind of long established itself as a very good product. Usually have great loyalty. Now, the downside of it is usually they're higher end in the market too. Less vulnerability if you've got a strong brand to competitive marketing actions. A lot of times, they'll try to point out the negatives of a really strong brand. Usually this will command higher margins. In other words, they can charge a little bit more for their product. They can make a little bit more money per unit they're going to sell. And we have increased marketing and communication effectiveness. That strong brand kind of sells itself, okay? And that helps you in your marketing efforts. Brand identity. This is where we see where a promise of a particular marketing effort or company, it's consistent, okay? Consistent across the fleet of products they've got out there. This helps create a personality and a life for the products and services. You actually do begin to develop personalities of products and services. And it's real funny, people that are really, really sold on something, they'll argue Maybe you've done that. Maybe you've seen somebody that's done that. That, nothing you can tell this person is going to make them change their mind. They're hooked on a product and they're not going to change. Okay? We have unique and consistent look, feel, tone, and voice for all communications. So if you'll notice, and as you guys are walking through this material with me, start to notice how companies, particularly like the umbrella brand companies, tend to have kind of that same consistent look with their products. There's some differentiation. They have some sort of tone and voice that's similar throughout all of their communications. So in other words, you don't have a real, like subtle commercial for one product and then have one that's just enormously loud and in your face for some other product in that umbrella. These things, the brand identity, these are critical, if not absolutely essential, for an organization's success. There are several key elements to the brand. One is the brand name, which is the name, tagline, or logo. We've looked at some logos and some simple, like one name entities earlier. And you can probably sit down and rattle off a couple of dozen of these that are just kind of stuck in your head. We have a brand promise. This is the most important thing your organization can promise to deliver every time. And if you really start listening to what these companies that are running these marketing campaigns are saying, you'll see that kind of theme throughout. The company does try to develop and push a personality for each brand out there. They want us as a consumer to associate certain things or certain brands with something. Is it fun, rugged, forceful, magical, things like that. And then we have brand associations. These relate more to the color, the images, the fonts, uniforms, equipments, and things like that. And we're going to get into talking about some of this, and I apologize, these slides are a bit small to read, but you might be able to blow them up a little bit. So the first line we have, or the first column, we got colors, the meaning, and then effective branding the colors can have on people. The first one is red. It's passion, excitement, love, danger, anger. This usually signifies importance and commands attention, makes you feel passionate or energized. Second row, orange, playfulness, vitality, happiness, friendliness. Yellow, happiness, green, stability, and then a few more. Light blues, tranquility, dark blue, professionalism. Purple, royalty, mystery. Pink, fertility, romance. As you start walking through some of these, and I'm going to read all the colors and all their attributes, you'll start to see these things in different ads and the colors they associate with their brand. It's really important, and if you don't get it right, you can have a really, really good product that is not going to be successful. So how do we build the company brand? The first thing we need to do is understand what the purpose of that brand is going to be. Then we have to determine what our target audience is going to be. We've talked a little bit about audiences before. Yeah, there's a lot of products out there that your target audience is basically anybody that's old enough to go buy something, at a Walmart, convenience store, anything like that. But then there's a lot of products out there that really are not going to have that broad of an appeal. So you want to pick out who you want to target. A great example that comes to mind is Disney. Disney does not target typically single adults, couples without children. They target families. So, they look at that. We want to define your company personality. So, things like we offer X product or service for your whatever target market is to add some value. Unlike such and such, we do this instead of that. So you'll kind of hear, and you should pick up statements like this as you listen to ads on TV, see them online. You'll start to pick this stuff up. Then we need to develop a logo and a tagline. A lot of times, the logo is something somebody will remember, or the tagline. They can't remember the product name, but they remember the tagline that's attached to it. Create a brand story and a voice, and then we want to design a look for the brand. So, like Apple and their computers, pretty simple. An Apple image with like a bite out of it. And people see that and they know what it is. Okay? Now, they do a little bit more than that. And you kind of have to really dig into this to see. But, Apple sells their computers, iPhones, tablets. But their bigger goal is to empower creativity and self-expression through their products. If we dig into Nike a little bit, their purpose is to unite the world through sports, create a healthy planet, active communities, and an equal playing field for all. So you may not kind of see that, but that's kind of what they're targeting. They're trying to sell this purpose. Okay? Now, why does it matter? A lot of our products or services, they're not for everyone. We talked about that on the target audience. Now, that might be difficult to understand, but it's the truth. Just like I mentioned before, your product may be very, very suited to one group. That's not a problem. Okay? You can really kind of hone in your targeting, your marketing effort on that target group, and you may be able to establish a real good connection with those people. Okay? But again, you got to know who they are first. So a real successful brand, they know exactly who their target audience is, and they're going to perform a lot of competitor research so they know exactly how they want to communicate to their target audience. Okay? So you can get a lot of information by looking at a competitor's efforts and their marketing. As far as brand positioning, how your brand is perceived relative to each other. Okay? This is kind of a process of deciding and communicating how you want your market to think and feel about your product. Do you want people to feel safe? Do you want them to feel comfortable? There's, the whole spectrum of emotion, the feeling and communicating thing here, okay? This helps you differentiate your product from the competitors and the where and how of your product and how you get it into the customer mind, okay? So we've got to create that association in a customer's mind so we make them perceive this brand in a specific way. One that keeps coming up to in my mind, and a lot of it is because we've got new grandchildren, is the Subaru vehicle. They've got an excellent campaign out there with the safety of their vehicles. And that, just kind of, they've built it where it sticks in your mind. Okay. They have a great understanding of what their customers want. They understand what a company, their capabilities are, and then they sell it. Now, it's not that other vehicles are not safe. They just make a real effort to put that out in front of people. And helps develop their position. They've developed their unique selling position that way. Now, the ideal point is you've got this market covered, but then you're always want to be looking for holes in the market. Because if you aren't, your competitor is. Okay? There's a lot of product positioning that can go on. One of these is what we call a price-based positioning. And this refers to offering your product at a competitive or lower price versus others in the market. A lot of times, consumers will choose those products based purely on price. They won't consider comparing other products or other options. They just know the best value, and that's what they're going to buy. This is often in the grocery store. There are lifestyle-based positioning. Okay. Like a finance app can be advertised as help growing your personal wealth through like high-risk trading and investments. This is appealing to people who are a little more fast-paced in their lifestyle. Or they can tone it down a little bit. Okay, they can build it more of a long-term, safe, secure savings where you put a little aside each month and just plan on doing this for a career. It's a little slower pace, so they can tweak their branding, even though it may be the same application, and appeal to different groups. We have characteristics-based positioning. These would be things like reliability, performance, efficiency, sustainability, aesthetics, whether it's a novel product or not. These help develop a unique positioning for your product in the market. Okay, remember, it's really rare that you're going to be bringing a product to market that is totally new, no competitors. Okay, so this positioning helps encourage consumers to develop a brand image based on what your product offers. Car brands do this a lot. I mentioned Volvo and Toyota. Mentioned Subaru here a couple of times. Safety, reliability, efficiency, things like that. And then we have quality-based positioning. So price can often be used as a positioning tool. Prestige positioning is when brands avoid competing on price. Now, the way this works is they set higher fees or prices for their product, which suggests to consumers it's a higher quality or it's a higher status. So, if you think about it, it doesn't matter if you buy a $10 watch somewhere or you buy a $20,000 Rolex. It's still a watch. But if you buy the Rolex, it's going to be considered a higher quality, a higher status symbol. And they've sold that brand based on that. It's more of a status thing. Okay? It's a luxury item for you to purchase a watch for $20,000. Personally, I think it's a little crazy, but that's my opinion. But if you look around, there's a lot of um, products out there that follow that pattern or that scheme. We also want to look at what we call a brand positioning map, and we'll look at one of those here in just a second. This is where we recognize product differentiation. To do this, you've got to do a little work. You've got to talk to consumers or get some sort of feedback on how they view your product. And you want to answer some simple questions. You don't have to make this really complicated. What are the benefits of your product? How are brands perceived relative to each other? Do you like X versus Y? Why? And then how can you make improvements to your product? This can help you identify those holes in the market we talked about a few minutes ago. It might also help you identify your competitors or substitute products that maybe you never even considered. So here is a brand positioning map. Here we're just looking at, is it trendy or old school, healthy or unhealthy, okay? And you can kind of see how some of these products have fallen out. Starbucks, Chipotle kind of tend to be in the trendy, healthy side. Subway is a little more old school, but viewed as a little healthier. Your Shake Shack, Chick-fil-A, it's kind of trendy, but it's more unhealthy. And then you see your Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, kind of old school, not really healthy. But you can get a lot of information from this. Maybe, and I think we've seen this with the McDonald's and their efforts with the Impossible Burger. They know they're viewed as an unhealthy food alternative, typically. But that Impossible Burger, if you remember, maybe you like them, not knocking it, it's a vegetable-based hamburger. I think they're really trying to move their position in this map more toward the healthy side, maybe becoming a little more trendy. So if you look at a lot of the big companies like this, that have been around a while, they're going to start looking at how can we move into, a different direction. How do we get out of the unhealthy? If nothing else, get out of the unhealthy into the healthier side. Or how do we get up here into this trendy, healthy category? Okay. They're always trying to reinvent themselves by looking at data like this. Another thing that's important is the packaging. Okay, number one, the packaging has to protect your product. You don't want the packaging to cause problems down the road that could really destroy customer loyalty. Something that can improve the shelf life of the product, but there's also a lot of issues with things like your plastics. They're getting a really, really bad name. Glass, not so much as far as contaminants, but there's other issues with glass. What kind of labeling do you have? How are you going to differentiate your bottled water from the other 30 different bottled waters in the cooler at the convenience store? You want something that'll prevent tampering. Now, this happened years and years ago, but there was a big Tylenol scare, and it nearly ruined that company. I can't remember now, 2 or 3 people died from cyanide being found in Tylenol capsules. I don't remember all the details of that story now, but they basically pulled every Tylenol product off the shelf everywhere. And it took a long time. I think they finally tracked it down to somebody was trying to kill their wife or husband or something, and they threw everybody off by putting 2 or 3 bottles at different locations with cyanide in there and killed 2 or 3 people. But that just was devastating. Nowadays, we have a lot more tamper-resistant packaging. Now, that being said, I'm well aware of some of the things, you know, the crazy things people do. They go in, they open up the Bluebell ice cream and lick it, and then put it back in the freezer. There's some things that's going to be really, really tough to cover, but these are things you got to think about, and it's a really, really big issue. You want to look at the design of your product package. Can you design something that sets your water bottle off from everybody else's? Then you're going to evaluate this. We evaluate everything. If you haven't really kind of picked up on that, you evaluate at every step, and then you evaluate everything again, and then you evaluate everything again. Okay? It's a never-ending process. Then we want to produce it. Okay? So there's really a lot that goes into the packaging efforts. Okay? Because packaging is also a cost to your product. Now, the right package, the right bottle shape, it's going to help increase your market share. And that will therefore reduce your costs. If you're selling more product, it translates into less cost per unit. So there's a lot of effort that goes into this. I've noticed a lot of different, particularly in package stores, like different bottles of, tequila, things like that. How some of those bottles have a different shape, and they're designed specifically with this in mind. So a lot of things, we've hit on a few of these already. As far as the packaging, you got to look at protection and safety. That's huge, especially in the world today. Is it a bottle attractive? Believe it or not, if you've got a bottle that doesn't look really good but a really good product inside, you're not going to have as good a sales as an inferior product and a more attractive bottle. Is the packaging usable? I remember years and years ago they came out with the splash proof pour concept in like your Clorox bleach bottles. As you pour them out of those bottles, if you pour too fast, it kind of, that bottle kind of, I don't know what the correct term is, but it kind of, burps and gulp, and they designed the bottle so it poured smoothly. Think about sustainability when we look at this. That's becoming a real big selling point with the up and coming generations. Is it sustainable? Is the packaging smaller? A lot of companies are looking at reducing the size of their packaging, which reduces the water needed, which is a lot of times it's just more water to get say a gallon. And the sustainability, is this stuff that's going to be easy to reproduce, without a lot of extra effort? And then think about the producibility. Are these containers, these packages that you buy, easy to produce, or does it take a lot of effort? So normally we would do this face to face, but I've got an idea I may throw out here. It won't be this one, but think about it. I just kind of want you guys to think about it. You've been hired as a marketing manager for an ag tech company. They build field sensors. The sensors are designed to give farmers information about soil pH, sorry about the pH, that should be lowercase p, and moisture levels. So using this stuff we've talked about in this lecture, how would I build a brand for this company? this will kind of fit into the concept of what we're doing as our group project. Okay? So you got to build a brand name. You know what the product is, so you need to build a brand name, come up with a brand promise, develop your personality, and then make associations with this. So this chapter is really kind of pivotal as far as your group project. So I would definitely focus some of your thoughts along these lines as you guys get together and work on that group project.